Hi, I'm Don Lefeve, President and CEO of the Commercial Vehicle Training Association. I'm joined by Brad Ball at this fireside chat, here to discuss issues that are going on in the CDL training industry. Brad, thanks for joining us. Let me pose a question to you, which I think is on everybody's minds. What has the impact of COVID-19 had on the CDL training sector?
COVID has turned everything upside down, both from the regulatory agencies, the SDLA's ability to issue permits and CDL licenses. From a school standpoint, social distancing and following CDC guidelines is imperative to continue operating. So we're doing exactly that. But in order to do that, it means much smaller classes, different ratios with our students on the pad and in the trucks. So our ability to train the same number of students is pretty severely impacted. I think that we're operating right now just under about 70% of our pre-COVID enrollments. And as I understand it, you probably know from hearing from other truck schools, some are impacted more than that. I know that community colleges are not open yet. They're still closed completely, right?
Yeah, many are.
Yeah. So, I guess the question is, when is it going to end, and what are some maybe lasting impacts from COVID on our industry? Because I don't see it ending anytime soon.
Yeah, I think that's that's certainly what I've heard from other truck schools. I think what at the beginning of COVID, we estimated that we would only produce roughly 60% of what we normally would in a normal year. In other words, we're going to be down about 40% of students. And in talking with schools and other carriers, I think that number is right on target. I think that the social distancing and, like you'd mentioned, the SDLAs, or state driver's license agencies, and their ability to have commercial learners permit testing and CDL skills tests obviously have been hampered. There are some states that are doing this very well, but we still have a mess in a number of states. I think the last count is about 9 states are still severely impacted and aren't even offering either CLP testing or CDL testing.
Yeah, I would agree. States like Florida, Texas, Tennessee, where we operate, they're really doing very well, and we have to give them credit for the ability to modify their operations to fit a new way of living for all of us. But also, the FMCSA has come out with a number of waivers that have really allowed some of the SDLAs to continue operating and delivering the service to the schools and the students that they wouldn't otherwise have been able to do without those waivers. So I want to make sure that credit is given.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the FMCSA and a number of the states deserve a lot of credit. A lot of them have really, like Texas in particular, I know has been really ahead of the curve and has done a phenomenal job working their way through this. Brad, what do you think some of the lasting impacts of COVID-19 are going to be on the industry or states?
I would guess some of the required in-person things that have to occur for a driver to be able to get a permit and get a skills test and then ultimately get their CDL license. And I think, right now, because of the FMCSA waivers, we're able to test third parties issuing knowledge tests. And that way the student doesn't necessarily have to go down to the DMV. I think that will be a lasting impact. And also just the entire concept of third-party testing, I think now is really shining as an example of the right way to allow for states to get testing accomplished on limited budgets.
Yeah, I agree on that. I've heard that, in fact, many of the states where we see problems or schools having problems, I think it's a lack of of testing infrastructure, and I think governments are going to have to look at what are core services and how can they utilize others or third-party contractors to actually accomplish the same constituent need or constituent service. So I think that I agree with you on that.
Well, I think we're just seeing a big log jam right now, and particularly in some states like I believe New Jersey right now has got a log jam of students backed up that they're trying to get permits issued and they can't, and those types of things have got to be solved, because this will no doubt this won't be the only pandemic that comes down the pike, and third parties can handle those variable volumes of students that move through, and I believe that the states are just limited in their ability to do that. So third-party testing just seems to be the answer.
What issues do you see on the horizon for the industry?
Right. Well, you and I have worked on ELDT for years, and that's, of course, was going to be right around the corner for us. Now that's been bumped out to 2022. February 2022. So that's certainly a big one that's coming, coming soon, relatively soon. That'll level the playing field and eliminate the CDL mills, so to speak. So I think that's probably one that we all look forward to. I don't know if you have a comment on that, but there are other issues like testing delays.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, ELDT is a big issue in the CDL training world. There's a number of benefits that are going to come from that, safety being first among those. I think having ELDT, and we're hopeful that the FMCSA can implement this on time. I know Congress in the new highway bill actually put some language in there requiring the FMCSA to benchmark and to report back because they missed deadlines. But I think that's a huge benefit to safety. I agree with you on the testing end as well. I think the testing issue is needs to get solved. Where I guess on a personal level, I'm hopeful that governments will just, like I had said, will reassess, how to deliver things better, faster, cheaper, right? Because, you need to have a skills test to get your CDL. They need to start work, and we need more drivers. The demographics and looking at the industry, we need to hire more drivers. So we're hopeful that will get resolved.
Yeah, kind of rolling back when you say need to hire more drivers, you got to think through this COVID situation. You've got baby boomers that are retiring at a certain pace, and you might argue that they're going to retire at that same pace, or perhaps even on an accelerated basis through the COVID pandemic. So that hole is still getting dug. At the same time, the supply of drivers is being severely limited with COVID. So this is a hole that's not going to be filled. So if there was a shortage before COVID started, although it may temporarily be masked by perhaps a lower demand for drivers during COVID, I believe what we're going to find is the shortage is just going to be greater on the backside of this event. So I think that we're all going to have to get together and solve some of these issues, or else we're going to have further limitations in our ability to produce drivers in the future.
Yeah, and kind of picking up on that, I mean, one of the industry issues that's out there are 18-year-old drivers, and whether the law should be, or the regulation should be changed to allow 18-year-old drivers to drive interstate. Where do you see that going?
Well, we certainly support it. I believe if you're old enough to be in the military, you should be old enough to drive a truck. Unfortunately, the way the law stands now, you have to go off and do something else for a few years before you can choose trucking as a career. And I think that allows for, idle hands, and, unfortunately people, they get in trouble, and, they do all kinds of other things. It's not a benefit. I believe that we can produce safe and reliable, quality drivers that are 18 to 20 years old. And I think the industry's come up with some ideas on how to make sure that perhaps there's further vetting or more stringent vetting of those younger drivers during this pilot period. And I hope that at some point we can lower the age to begin a trucking career. Don, let me ask you a question. I'm interested in the fact that, years ago, most of the trucks were manual. Now everything coming off the OEM lines are automatics, and yet we still have these auto restrictions. What are your opinions on the direction of all that?
CVTA hasn't taken an official position, but I will tell you I've had some members talk to me about whether or not we should have a manual endorsement, not an automatic restriction. And just let me kind of set the stage from a commercial driving school standpoint. We surveyed members 2 years ago, and the number of automatics at that time was, I think it was about 20%. We do an annual survey, and this year the majority, have automatics. Obviously, we have a number of schools that do maintain manuals, but it's just they're becoming harder and harder to find as OEMs are actually charging more for automatics or for manuals than they are automatics. So it's certainly the wave of the future, and at a certain point, I think the regulations need to kind of catch up to what the OEMs are producing and what people are driving. Understandably, we're in that transition period, but I think it would be smart for regulators to start looking at that switch. Thank you very much for joining us at the Fireside Chat. We hope everybody has a safe and healthy day.